Wars come very suddenly. I have lived through a period when one looked forward, as we do now, with anxiety and uncertainty to what would happen in the future. Suddenly, something did happen. Tremendous, swift, overpowering, irresistible. Let me remind the House of the sort of thing that happened in 1914. There was absolutely no quarrel between Germany and France. One July afternoon, the German ambassador drove down the Quai d'Orsay and said to Mr. Viviani, the French Prime Minister, "We have been forced to mobilize against Russia, and war will be declared. What is to be the position of France?" The French Prime Minister made the answer which his cabinet had agreed upon, that France would act in accordance with what she considered to be her own interests. The ambassador said, "You have an alliance with Russia, have you not?" "Quite so," said the French Prime Minister. And that was the process by which, in a few minutes, the area of the struggle, already serious in the East, was enormously widened and multiplied by the throwing in of the two great nations of the West. But sometimes even a declaration of neutrality does not suffice. On this very occasion, as we now know, the German ambassador was authorized by his government, in case the French did not do their duty by their Russian ally, in case they showed any disposition to back out of the conflict which had been resolved on by the German nation, to demand that the fortresses of Toul and Verdun should be handed over to German troops as a guarantee that the French, having declared their neutrality, would not change their mind at a subsequent moment. That is how that great thing happened in our own lifetime. I am bound to say that I cannot see in the present administration of Germany any assurance that they would be more nice-minded in dealing with the vital and supreme situation than was the imperial government of Germany, which was responsible for this procedure being adopted towards France. No, sir, and we may, within a measurable period of time, a lifetime of those who are here, who are not in a proper state of security, be confronted on some occasion with a visit from an ambassador, and may have to give an answer in a very few hours. If that answer is not satisfactory, within the next few hours the crash of bombs exploding in London and cataracts of masonry and fire and smoke will apprise us of any inadequacy which has been permitted in our aerial defenses. We are vulnerable as we have never been before. I have often heard criticisms of the Liberal government for the war. All I can say is that a far graver complaint rests upon those who now hold power, if by any chance, against our wishes and against our hopes, trouble should come. Now, one of the lessons of the past has been learned, and one of them has been applied, and the situation is incomparably more dangerous. Then we had the Navy, no air menace worth considering. Then the Navy was the surest shield of Britain. As long as it was ready in time and at its stations, we could say to any foreign government, "Well, what are you going to do about it? We will not declare ourselves. We will take our own time. We will work out our own course. We have no desire to hurt anyone, but we shall not be pressed or forced into any hasty action unless we think fit and well." We cannot say that now. This cursed, hellish invention and development of war from the air has revolutionized our position. We are not the same kind of country we used to be when we were an island only 25 years ago. That is borne in upon me more than anything else. It's not merely a question of what we like and what we do not like, of ambitions and desires, of rights and interests, but it is a question of safety and independence. that is involved now as never before. It seems to me that there are three definite decisions which we should now take at once and without delay. The first affects the Army. We ought to begin the reorganization of our civil factories so that they can be turned over rapidly to war purposes. All over Europe that is being done, and to an amazing extent. This process is incomparably more efficient than anything that existed in the days of Prussian imperialism before the war. Every factory in those countries is prepared to turn over to the production of some material for the deplorable and melancholy business of slaughter. What have we done? There is not an hour to lose. Those things cannot be done in a moment. The process should be started, and the very maximum of money that can be usefully spent will be spent from today on if we act with wisdom. Then there is the question of the Navy. For the Navy, at any rate, we should regain freedom of design. We should get rid of this London Treaty, which has crippled us in building the kind of ships we want, and has stopped the United States from building a great battleship which she probably needed, and to which we should not have had the slightest reason to object. It has forced us to spend some of our hard-earned money, the little there is for these purposes, unwisely. It has forced us to take great ships, which would have been of enormous utility in convoying vessels bearing food to these islands, and to sink them in the ocean when they had 10 to 15 years of useful life in them. We must regain our freedom at the earliest possible moment. We shall be helped in doing so by the fact that another of the parties to that treaty is resolved to regain her freedom too. Then there is the air. I cannot conceive how, in the present state of Europe and of our position in Europe, we can delay in establishing the principle of having an air force at least as strong as that of any power that can get at us. I think that is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. To only begin to put us back to the position in which we were brought up. We have lived under the shield of the Navy. To have an air force as strong as the air force of France or Germany, whichever is the stronger, ought to be the decision which Parliament should take, and which the national government should proclaim. There is only one other point which I will mention. That is the coordination of the three services. I doubt very much whether, at this stage, there is room for economy in any of them, but at any rate it would be advantageous, in my opinion, if the problem were studied from a central point of view, because things are changing very much. The emphasis should be thrown here or there according to the needs of modern conditions, and there should be much more effective coordination than now exists. I ask that sometime in this session we can have a discussion on the three services combined. It would be a valuable discussion, one such as has frequently been allowed in previous years, and was never more necessary than at the present time. The responsibility of His Majesty's government is grave indeed, and there is this which makes it all the graver. It is a responsibility which they have no difficulty in discharging, if they choose. They are told they have to wait for public opinion, that they must bring that along, and must be able to assure the good people here that everything is being done with the most pacific intentions. They must make a case. But nothing like that can stand between them and their responsibility to the Crown and Parliament for the safety and security of the country. Government command overwhelming majorities in both branches of the legislature. Nothing that they ask will be denied to them. They have only to make their proposals, and they will be supported in them. Let them not suppose that if they make proposals with confidence and conviction for the safety of the country, their countrymen will not support them. I take so poor a view of the patriotic support which this nation gives to those who it feels are doing their duty by it. I cannot feel that at the present time the government are doing their duty in these matters of defense, and particularly in respect of the air. It seems to me that while we are becoming ever more entangled in the European situation, And while we are constantly endeavoring to weaken, relatively, our friends upon the continent of Europe, we nevertheless are left exposed to a mortal thrust, and are deprived of that old sense of security and independence upon which the civilization of our island has been built.